Thank you so much.
even then, kids need many doses of the vaccine. But the third challenge we have, and probably even bigger one, the biggest challenge, is that in contrast to smallpox, where you could always see your enemy, every single person almost who was infected with smallpox had this telltale rash. So you could get around the disease, you could vaccinate around the disease and cut it off. Polio, it's almost completely different. The vast majority of people who are infected with the polio virus show absolutely no sign of the disease. So you can't see the enemy most of the time. And as a result, we've needed a very different approach to eradicate polio than what was done with smallpox. We've had to create one of the largest social movements in history. There's over 10 million people, probably 20 million people, largely volunteers, who have been working over the last 20 years in what is now been called the largest internationally coordinated operation in peacetime. These people, these 20 million people, vaccinate over 500 million children every single year, multiple times at the peak of our operations. Now, giving the polio vaccine is simple. It's just 2 drops like that. But reaching 500 million people is much, much tougher. And these vaccinators, these volunteers, they have got to dive headlong into some of the toughest, densest urban slums in the world. They've got to trek under sweltering suns to some of the most remote, difficult-to-reach places in the world. And they also have to dodge bullets because we have got to operate during shaky ceasefires and truces to try and vaccinate children, even in areas affected by conflict. One reporter who was watching our program in Somalia about 5 years ago, a place which has eradicated polio, not once but twice because they got reinfected. He was sitting on the side of the road watching one of these polio campaigns unfold. And a few months later he wrote, "This is foreign aid at its most heroic." And these heroes, they come from every walk of life, all sorts of backgrounds. But one of the most extraordinary is Rotary International. This is a group whose million-strong army of volunteers have been working to eradicate polio for over 20 years. They're right at the center of the whole thing. Now, it took years to build up the infrastructure for polio eradication, more than 15 years, much longer than it should have. But once it was built, the results were striking. Within a couple of years, every country that started polio eradication rapidly eradicated all 3 of their polio viruses, with the exception of 4 countries that you see here. And in each of those was only part of the country. And then, by 1999, one of the 3 polio viruses that we were trying to eradicate had been completely eradicated worldwide. Proof of concept.